You never seen it?
No.
He gets a glass of Flint tap water, and I swear to God, he drinks it like this. Watch this.
Can I get some water? I really did need a glass of water. This is not a stunt.
Usually when something isn't a stunt, you have to say
It's
that.
100% a stunt. When was the last time a president stopped a speech to ask, can I get a glass of water? They would never do that. They would have water ready.
One of the most interesting moments in the 2008 campaign occurred when a man, like Obama himself, came from out of nowhere to recount his experiences with Barack Obama, the man. His name was Larry Sinclair, and he told an amazing story. He said that in 1999, he had encountered Barack Obama in Illinois, had sex with Barack Obama, and then used with
Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson just tore back the curtain on the Obama legend with a roast that was sharp, relentless, and savagely funny. They took aim at the polished image, the hollow promises, and the cult-like reverence that still shields him from criticism. From carefully crafted speeches to post-presidential theatrics, nothing was off-limits. This wasn't just comedy, it was a full-scale dismantling of America's favorite political mirage. If you thought Obama was beyond critique, Rogan and Carlson just flipped the channel for good.
A lot of what they campaigned on, they don't practice at all. Great example is the Obama administration. The Hope and Change website had to be changed because there was a bunch of stuff in there about whistleblowers.
No, I don't think Mr. Snowden was a patriot. I called for a thorough review of our surveillance operations before Mr. Snowden made these leaks. My preference would have been for a lawful, orderly examination of these laws.
Protecting whistleblowers, which they didn't do at all. It was one of the worst administrations for whistleblowers.
Now that he's a Netflix producer, along with his hate-peddled wife, Michelle, he's producing more racial division. The latest is called Leave the World Behind. It's a fictional thriller about the collapse of technology and what humans would do with no phones or computers. The movie follows a family on vacation at a rental house, and one night they're visited by a father and a daughter who show up seeking shelter. They say their phones no longer work and they need a place to stay. So immediately the white family, because they're evil, that's encoded in their DNA, of course, is suspicious of the visitors because they're black.
Joe Rogan leaned back like a man about to carve up a sacred cow, and he was starving the topic Barack Obama. Not just the man, but the myth, the brand, the floating aura that still lingers in American media like overpriced incense in a yoga retreat. Joe didn't need to smash anything. He just walked through the funhouse mirror and started pointing out the absurdity.
Stage. And he roasted Trump.
Donald Trump is here tonight.
And one of the lines he said to Trump, he said, I'm one thing that you'll never be, which is the president of the United States.
Donald Trump has been saying that he will run for president as a Republican, which is surprising since I just assumed he was running as a joke.
And you could see Trump in his head going, okay, I'm going to run now. That one moment where Obama was talking shit to him might be the reason why Trump was like, I'll f***ing show you.
First, Joe tackled how Obama is still spoken about in hushed, reverent tones. Like he floated down from a rainbow in a tailored suit to sprinkle humanity with life wisdom, Rogan found it laughable. For a guy who no longer has to do anything difficult, Obama's praise keeps increasing. It's the dream gig, drop vague inspiration. Post a playlist and disappear behind the Netflix logo.
Goes on and on and on like this. Here's a clip.
I'm asking for you to remember that if the world falls apart, trust should not be doled out easily to anyone, especially white people.
Can't trust white people. They're evil. This is the guy, remember, who became famous at the Democratic Convention in 2004 by telling us there is no white America, there's no black America, it's just one America. But of course, that's not really a profit model in politics, is it? So he's been stoking race hatred ever since.
Joe deconstructed the Obama brand like a scientist examining a synthetic diamond. None of it felt genuine anymore. The man spent 8 years running the country, made all the tough calls any president would, yet somehow floated through with his halo. Untouched, Rogan laughed at how people don't remember Obama for what he did, but for how calmly he looked doing it. It's as if his one political superpower was never having to act at all.
By election day, most Americans knew only one thing about Barack Obama, other than he was handsome and a good communicator: hope and change. But they knew nothing about him, his origins, what he believed, and legitimate questions about those facts were turned away, as they often are, with the claim, "That's a conspiracy theory, you're crazy, shut up!"
Then Joe zeroed in on the contradictions: a man who sounded like Gandhi, but governed like a corporate CEO during a merger. He preached peace, but authorized drone strikes like it was part of a game. Rogan wasn't mad about the hard decisions. He just found it hilarious that people still saw him as a yoga teacher with a Nobel Prize. Even his speech cadence was a performance. The pauses, the knowing looks, the softly spoken wisdom, it was like political. Asamar Joe joked that Obama could read cereal box ingredients and half the country would feel spiritually renewed in the post-presidency. It wasn't retirement, it was a brand explosion. Media companies, Netflix deals, podcasts, curated playlists. He'd gone from commander-in-chief to lifestyle guru. Rogan laughed, imagining Obama in a studio, proving documentaries between green smoothies. But the punchline came from the psychology. People weren't looking for a leader. They wanted a therapist in a presidential suit, and they picked a guy with the vibe of a tenured professor who assigns his own autobiography as homework.
What you know now, do you wish you had a third term? You know what, if I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement in my sweats looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and ceremony, I'd be fine with that.
We know he wasn't really running the country.
Yeah.
We used to think he was actually running the country, and now they're like, no, he didn't even see those executive orders. That was all auto.
Then came the media. Joe shredded them for their never-ending infatuation. He said they treated Obama like he was sculpted from moonlight and unicorn tears. Any criticism was treated like blasphemy. Obama could toss out divisive language in the press, would frame it as moral brilliance. Enter Tucker Carlson if Joe was the one cracking jokes while poking the myth. Tucker was the guy showing up with a rhetorical wrecking ball. He called Obama's campaign the greatest bait and switch in political memory. Hope and change on the surface, managerial stagnation underneath. Tucker dubbed it emotional deception. The words didn't matter, only the feelings they stirred. Obama didn't lead a movement, he sold a product. The slogans, the posters, they weren't ideas, they were inspirational laptop stickers. Tucker was amazed people still bought it, even out of office. Obama carried this aura of immunity, like questioning him required federal approval.
First piece, here's the cliff notes. Obama colludes with Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries and Schumer. Sunday morning calls Biden and says, you're done. Kamala's gonna 25th Amendment you, and you gotta step aside.
And who places the call?
Obama.
Obama does.
So Obama calls the sitting president and tells him, you're done. Then tells Kamala Harris, you're gonna be the nominee, but if you don't gain traction, if you're not popular, we're gonna...
Tucker tore into the intellectual elitism. Obama didn't just campaign, he lectured the Ivy League tone, the dramatic pauses, the air of superior wisdom. Tucker argued he wasn't leading Americans, he was schooling them, and most Americans weren't signing up for philosophy 401. They just wanted stable jobs. Then came the real roast, Obama's legacy, despite the nostalgia. Tucker said the results were underwhelming. The middle class kept shrinking. Military entanglements deepened, racial divisions didn't heal, they worsened. And instead of leading from the front, Obama often sounded like an outside observer weighing in like a guest. Professor rather than a president, Tucker noted. How Obama showed up for symbolic fights, but vanished when messy, uncomfortable truths were needed. It was all about timing, optics, curated interviews. He laughed at how Obama was somehow portrayed as both aloof scholar and emotional activist, depending. On the magazine cover, it was like political quantum physics. He existed everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
He ran against all that stuff.
Yeah, he did.
Right? Iraq was the bad war. Afghanistan was the good war. And he ran a campaign against that.
You know,
but he ended up throwing into prison the guy who told the truth about it.
Mark Halperin and John Heilemann wrote a book about both the 2008 election and the 2012 election. And in the second book, they quote Obama twice, saying things that just put it all into perspective. Number one,
Tucker roasted Obama's love affair with tech and Hollywood. The former president's image was as manicured as a social media influencer's feed. Drone shots, perfect lighting, and polished messaging. Tucker joked that while Obama hadn't aged a day, his public persona had gone through more filters than a teenager on Instagram. The biggest laugh came when Tucker mocked the irony. The man who promised to reinvent politics turned out to be the ultimate insider deals behind closed doors. Establishment alliances, well-timed silence. Classic Washington, just in cooler packaging. Obama didn't break the system. He rebranded it. Tucker wrapped it up with a brutal metaphor. Obama was like a fine dining restaurant with great ambience, but terrible food you walk out thinking you had. A memorable evening, then wonder why you're still hungry and broke.
Obama in Illinois had sex with Barack Obama and then used cocaine with him. Sinclair went on to make these claims publicly at the National Press Club in Washington, to sign a sworn affidavit and to take a lie detector test. But he was dismissed. In fact, he was attacked. Obama shills like Ben Smith of Politico batted the claims out without refuting them. They're absurd. And the rest of the media followed suit. But the claims weren't absurd. We're not claiming they're true, but they were certainly credible. This was a first-hand account of Barack Obama's behavior by someone who was willing to sworn.
That was the Obama years, stylish, impressive, but ultimately hollow. As both Joe and Tucker closed in, they hit the same core idea. Obama had perfected the art of seeming profound without having to prove it. He became a symbol for people who wanted to feel smart without doing the homework. Joe found it funny, Tucker found it dangerous, but both agreed. Obama wasn't really a president, he was a narrative, Joe said. The whole thing felt like a TED Talk that overstayed its welcome by 8 years. Charisma on tap with just enough policy to pretend it mattered. Meanwhile, Tucker compared him to a screensaver, soothing to watch but doing absolutely nothing behind the scenes. Neither hated him, but their roast made it clear the myth of Obama. This might still be floating, but after this it was wheezing under the spotlight of hard truth and unapologetic mockery, and Tucker wasn't done. He came back in like a surgeon who had just autopsied a myth and found it stuffed with motivational slogans.
Interesting. So he knew Barack Obama, and in his view, Barack Obama liked the same kind of partying you were looking for.
Yeah.
Okay. So sex and drugs, in other words.
Well, the sex part I wasn't so sure about until, of course, you make your move, but it became obvious very quick. The coke part I thought was interesting because of the way that I had brought it up.
So I'm stepping on your story. So you pull up, and I apologize. So you pull up to this bar. The driver is basically scouting some dude for you to hang out with.
Correct.
There's this guy, Barack Obama. Have you ever heard of Barack Obama?
Tucker dove deeper into the absurdity of Obama nostalgia every time a crisis hits. Economic, social, international, someone yells that things would have been better if Obama were still in charge. Like he was the Jedi master of calm, whispering solutions. From the great beyond, but Tucker wasn't buying the myth he pointed out that people clung to. Obama's image, not because he solved anything, but because he never looked messy while failing. No shouting, no scandals, just perfectly calibrated coolness. Obama could have been rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, while softly narrating a podcast, and half the country would have thanked him for his zen. Energy. Meanwhile, Rogan circled back to the cult-like devotion. He joked that if Obama launched his own supplement line, Hollywood would be hooked by breakfast. The worship wasn't about substance, it was about feeling. Most people couldn't even remember what Obama promised, but they remembered how he made them feel. To Joe, that made him the Tony Robbins of global politics. And that wasn't on Obama, it was on us, for craving smooth talk instead of actual results. Joe laughed at how America became addicted to being inspired rather than informed.
Obama gets elected.
Yes.
He's very much the peace candidate. He's for transparency.
Well, I like to say that it was Saint Obama that came down from the heavens
right.
into the White House
Black
to save
Jesus
us.
returns.
That's right.
And but he's very much. I remember, in fact, being on television saying, he was this wild-eyed peacenik lefty guy.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, he wasn't.
Oh, he wasn't.
Obama, Joe said, was basically a human dopamine button, easy on the ears, vague on facts, heavy on vibes. It's great for a Spotify playlist, not so much for a presidency. Then Tucker jumped back in, targeting the real aftermath, the bureaucratic leftovers, the nonprofit empires, the subtle influence networks still humming under the radar. He argued Obama's true legacy wasn't in office, it was the machine he left behind, running on autopilot while pretending to be neutral. He called it the most elegant sleight of hand in American political history, and in the end, both men reached the same conclusion. Obama wasn't just a politician, he was a cultural hallucination, and like any good illusion, once you spot the wires and smoke, you can't unsee it, and they weren't finished, not even close.